After attending a friend's wedding, my wife returned with an STD. No argument, I filed for divorce. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The nurse's voice didn't shake when she said I tested positive. I was in the break room at the depot, holding a styrofoam cup that had gone cold. I drive a city maintenance truck, salt in winter, potholes in summer, steady work, predictable routes, insurance good enough to cover routine screening. I'm 32, practical, boring on purpose. Married to Julia, who lights up every room and usually softens my square edges. Only this time, her light had been strange since Theo's wedding. She went without me because I picked up an extra shift after an axle snapped on Route 6, and we needed the overtime. The nurse explained the follow-up, the prescription, the incubation window, in plain words that landed like nails. I stared at the clock and felt time split. Health, trust, home, suddenly all on a wobbling table. I pictured our bathroom mirror fogging that night she came home, how she showered, twice, humming off-key. People always ask, how did you not know? You don't look for a fire alarm when you're making breakfast. I thanked the nurse, wrote down the pharmacy, and stood there until my foreman knocked. You okay, Mark? I lied reflexively. We all do. Yeah, just need to pick up a script. He nodded, concerned but busy. The door closed, and the world got quiet enough to hear the blood in my ears. I knew I'd have to tell Julia, but first, I had to understand the dates. Because dates don't lie, even when people do. I ended the call and realized the calendar had just become evidence. Before the wedding, our life ran on small rituals. Julia's Sunday pancakes, my Tuesday cardio, a shared thrift habit that made our apartment feel like a curated museum of other people's stories. We argued about toothpaste caps and screen time, nothing that breaks a marriage. I skipped Theo's wedding because the city was short-staffed and a late freeze destroyed a chunk of asphalt. Overtime paid for our dental plan, not romance, but we'd agreed. Julia had sent photos the night before, a dress the color of late peaches, a caption, "You'd hate these shoes, Mr. Practical." When she came home the next night at 3:07 a.m., I smelled a new perfume and heard the shower before I saw her face. You're up? She said, startled. Couldn't sleep, I said. Drive okay? She laughed too brightly. Your favorite, country roads and a tipsy GPS. I let it go, because you let a lot go when you want to. The next morning, she was soft, attentive, making coffee like a peace offering no one had asked for. We watched a game. She scrolled. Her phone lay face down, which I told myself was habit, not strategy. I went to work, returned, and the perfume lingered, a note I couldn't place, like the smell of a hotel lobby you only pass through once. Little frictions, her defensiveness, my silence, rubbed the edges raw. But normalcy is stubborn. I told myself tired people act weird, while the clock kept whispering otherwise. It's amazing how many explanations a mind can manufacture. Her jokes got sharper. You're interrogating me like you patch asphalt. Slow and messy. Receipts went missing. The framed photo from Theo's welcome dinner shifted on the shelf, as if moved and replaced by someone distracted. I remembered the exact minute her key turned. 3:07 a.m., a number branded into the night. Her phone lived face down, face up only for Face ID. Works wild, she said, and showed me nothing. We'd always shared passcodes casually, the way you share grocery lists. Now there was a thumb hovering like a guard at a velvet rope. At dinner, she said, I'm just tired. It was a long day and night. I nodded, telling myself that bridesmaids are unpaid staff and exhaustion is a universal language. I wanted to be the man who believed his wife instead of the man who policed her. Then the clinic called. I kept that to myself for a day because I wanted to line up facts, not flare accusations. I checked our shared credit card portal for my pharmacy copay and saw nothing odd. Yet, I scrolled further and found a ride receipt in her email banner when a notification flashed, a timestamp in the after midnight range, a route that'd been away from our apartment before returning. I felt the first clean tear in the curtain I'd carefully pulled shut. At the clinic, Dr. Patel was efficient and calm. The incubation window for this infection is typically 1 to 2 weeks, she said, sliding a sheet across the counter like a bridge over panic. There are rarer outliers, but generally, recent exposure explains a positive. My last screening had been 6 months ago, negative. We hadn't been with anyone else, At least, I hadn't. I heard myself ask careful, lawyerly questions I didn't know I had in me. So if I tested positive today, I likely contracted it within 14 days? She nodded. That's the most probable scenario. Probable. A word that leaves a door open just wide enough for denial to slip through. She prescribed treatment, recommended Julia be tested, and told me to avoid blame while prioritizing health. Facts first, feelings later, she said, which felt like begging the ocean to hold still. I texted Julia, we need to talk tonight. She replied, big day, can it wait? I typed, deleted, typed again. It's medical. She sent a thumbs up and a heart. 2 emojis doing the work of a conversation we weren't having. I picked up the prescription and drove home under a sky that wouldn't commit. Clouds threatening rain and failing. I put the paper with the dates on the table and stared at it until the digits blurred. I realized my timeline didn't fit hers, and someone had to move. I tried calm. Julia, I tested positive today. She blinked, then reached for the easiest draft. False positives happen. Or maybe you caught something years ago that just activated? I slid the info sheet over. Incubation window says otherwise. She skimmed, lips pressed. Well, I had a cold sore once. Is that the same? No, I said, gentler than I felt. This isn't that. She pivoted. I drank a lot at the wedding. People were hugging. Who knows? I watched her stack explanations like wet cards. We both need testing and treatment, I said. Today. She deflated. Tomorrow? I've got inventory at work. I nodded, and in that nod decided 2 things. I would schedule her appointment myself, and I would start documenting everything. Not to punish, but to keep my mind from melting. I saved the clinic voicemail, filed the PDF, photographed the pill bottle with the date visible. That night, she slept facing the wall. I stared at the ceiling and counted the whir of the fan. I'm not a man who snoops. I'm a man who fixes. But fixing requires parts, and parts require facts. The next morning, I checked our bank app again, scanning for the night of the wedding. A small hotel POS charge popped like a flare. I told myself there had to be a harmless reason, and kept scrolling. The charge was for 2 drinks at 1:41 a.m. at the hotel attached to the venue. Nothing damning by itself, but it was a breadcrumb. I opened Julia's Instagram and clicked through Theo's wedding hashtag. A bridesmaid selfie showed a sliver of hallway carpet distinctive as a fingerprint, burnt orange with navy chevrons. In the background, a door number peaked, 521. I zoomed in and felt ridiculous, a detective using screenshots instead of badges. I checked the rideshare log from a previous email verification. Her account was linked to our shared card, and found a trip starting at 2:58 a.m., ending near our place at 3:07 a.m. So the timing lined up with the sound of our door. But there was another trip earlier, around midnight, leaving the venue and looping back 15 minutes later, an aborted ride. I called the hotel and asked for lost and found, then casually confirmed that 5XX was the block with a lounge exit. Yes, sir, the clerk said. I hung up, heart pounding like I'd stolen something. The carpet, the door, the receipts, individually innocent, together noisy. I told myself to breathe and not script a confession before I had a confession. Then a new notification flashed. A pharmacy text reminding Julia of an appointment she'd allegedly scheduled tomorrow. She hadn't told me she'd already called a clinic recommended by a bridesmaid. I asked her at dinner, "Did you schedule something?" She speared a carrot, eyes on the plate. "Just a routine check," she said. "I thought we were doing this together." "I didn't want to worry you," she replied, which is a cousin of "I didn't want to get caught." I kept my voice steady. "Julia, the hotel hall in that bridesmaid photo. Do you remember what floor the after-party was on?" She froze, then shrugged. 5. They all look the same. I told her about the drink charge. She called it wedding blur. I mentioned the aborted rideshare. She said the driver took a wrong turn. Possible, sure. Probable. I went back to Theo's public post and cross-referenced the schedule. Speeches, first dance, shuttle departures. Midnight was the bouquet. The lounge closed to the public at 1. So the bar receipt at 1:41 meant a private space or a staff extension. I DM'd the photographer, saying I'd lost a tie clip and needed to know which floor had the lounge for a quick look. He replied with a photo map. 5th floor. I needed one more confirmation. I texted a bridesmaid I knew vaguely, Lisa, and asked if Julia was okay after the wedding. Seemed stressed. I wrote, Lisa replied that Julia left the after-party to talk with someone upstairs. Who? I typed, then deleted, then typed again. Lisa said she didn't pry. It wasn't her business. But a groomsman named Aaron looked worried and followed after. Aaron had dated Julia before me for 6 months, freshman year, a fact we'd filed under harmless history. I thanked Lisa and sat there breathing in the hum of the fridge. Who and where were forming? Why was fog? I still didn't know if I was chasing a tragedy or a pattern. Medical risk is its own stake, though, and I couldn't gamble on fog. I printed the clinic notes. I saved screenshots of every charge. I called my union rep, not for divorce advice, but to ask, anonymously, about medical documentation if I needed leave. He told me to keep everything. That night, Julia apologized without offering the noun. I'm sorry this is happening, she said. Happening, did a lot of work, slippery and passive. We'll get through it, she added, eyes glossy. I wanted to believe, because belief is a kind of morphine. But the drug was wearing off. I booked us both for Dr. Patel, same day, no wiggle room. I also called Ms. Alvarez, a lawyer a co-worker used during a tough separation, and asked for a consultation about boundaries during a medical issue. I planned a conversation where facts would walk in before feelings took over. I printed a clean timeline and taped it to a manila folder. Friday rehearsal, Saturday ceremony, after party, 1:41 a.m. Hotel charge, $258 rideshare start, 3:07 door, Monday mood, Wednesday clinic call. I added incubation window, 7 to 14 days, test date, Thursday. I gathered screens, photographer map, bridesmaid DM, bank and ride logs, clinic instructions. I wasn't building a courtroom. I was building a life raft that wouldn't collapse if my heart did. The plan was simple. Present evidence without adjectives, outline 2 paths, and ask for the truth in full. Path 1. Total transparency, testing, individual and joint counseling, written boundaries, and a year of work. Path 2. Separation for health and safety. Then divorce if the truth couldn't stand upright. I wrote the options on an index card so I wouldn't improvise pain into poetry. In the morning, I'd start with Dr. Patel, medical first, then meet Ms. Alvarez in the afternoon. I told myself a marriage can survive one night if it meets sunlight without sunglasses. In the quiet, I remembered Theo's toast about love being a series of choices and wanted to laugh and cry at once. I knew the next 24 hours would decide every other day after. I set the table like a mediator. Water, paper, pens, no wine, no music. I need to show you something, I said, and slid the folder forward. Julia glanced and winced. This feels like a trial. It's a timeline, I said. Words don't have sides unless we give them uniforms. She skimmed the receipts, the ride logs, the DM. Lisa is dramatic, she said weakly. Dr. Patel first, I said, and we went. In the exam room, Julia was quiet, answering questions with nods. Dr. Patel spoke to us both, respectful and clear. Given these dates, the most likely exposure occurred around the wedding weekend. Julia stared at the floor. We'll retest in a week to confirm clearance after treatment, Dr. Patel added. Back home, I asked, do you want to tell me what happened? She swallowed. I drank too much. Aaron and I talked. We kissed. I panicked. I left. I waited. Did you go to a room? No, she said. No. The words sounded rented. I almost grabbed the belief morphine again because the alternative burned. Then she said, I'm sorry you couldn't come to the wedding. And I understood the pivot. If I had gone, this would be my fault. I felt myself bending to her excuse until the phone on the table buzzed. It was Dr. Patel's nurse confirming Julia's separate test from the day after the wedding. A detail I hadn't known. We have her results ready for pickup, the voicemail said. Julia blinked. I just wanted to be sure. Sure of what? I asked. She crumbled, then held, like a dancer freezing mid-fall. We went upstairs, she whispered. I didn't plan it. I was angry you weren't there. Everyone kept asking why. Aaron said he missed who I was when we were 19, and I wanted to be someone who didn't pay bills for 1 hour. The explanation was honest enough to hurt and vague enough to hide. Did you use protection? I asked, hating the words. She shook her head. Tears came then, big and messy, and part of me wanted to gather her, the other part wanted to climb out of my skin. I called Lisa. I need you to be precise, I said. Was Julia alone in the hall? Lisa sighed. She was with Aaron when they left the lounge. They both came back later. The word later stretched like a bridge over a canyon I couldn't cross. I laid the folder on the coffee table, opened to the map, the receipts, the messages. This is the story the numbers tell, I said. Julia nodded, hollow. I wanted to pretend it didn't happen, she said. And then the clinic called you, and I thought maybe we could outrun it. We can't, I said, not unkindly. This is my body too. She whispered, I know. We sat in a silence, shaped like a future we couldn't share easily. Here are the paths, I said, reading from the cards so my voice wouldn't crack into blame. 1. Truth, counseling, written boundaries, full device transparency, financial separation for a while, and we rebuild slowly. 2. We separate now for health and clarity and likely file for divorce. She asked, do I get a vote? Yes, I said, but so do my lungs, my blood, my sleep. She looked at the ring she'd twisted loose and set on the table. I want to try, she said. I'll do everything. My chest tightened. I believed she meant it today. I also believed the scar would pulse every time a calendar dinged. I told her we'd discuss with Ms. Alvarez tomorrow, and her face went white. Ms. Alvarez was steady water. 2 priorities, she said, health and legal clarity. In our state, no-fault divorce is standard. Medical documentation matters for temporary orders. She read the timeline without flinching. You can separate bedrooms now, divide finances to protect both parties, and agree on transparency terms if you attempt reconciliation. Julia nodded, signing the release to send her test results to our shared file. We left with a draft separation agreement and a counseling referral. I told Theo I couldn't keep the secret because the infection meant people needed to be honest with partners. He was stunned, then quiet, then furious at Aaron. The friend group fractured in a clean, ugly line. Some called me cruel, others sent late-night thumbs up like courage coupons. I finished treatment, confirmed negative on retest. Julia followed the regimen, too. For 2 weeks we moved like roommates. I tried to carry both shame and dignity without dropping either. Every grocery list felt like a truce document. At night, the silence had a shape. I realized trying would cost me everything and might still not be enough. Counseling began with inventory. Truths told, truths delayed, truths denied. The therapist didn't arbitrate guilt. She charted choices. Repair requires redundancy, she said. Promises and proof. We made rules: location sharing, phone transparency for a season, social drinking limits, individual therapy for Julia about conflict avoidance. We put finances in writing, too. Separate accounts, shared bills, no secret debt. It wasn't punishment, it was scaffolding. Julia worked hard, cried honestly, showed me receipts before I asked. I still woke at 3:07 some nights and listened to water in the pipes. Healing isn't cinematic. It's boring and humiliating and then, sometimes, gentle. But every kindness from her felt like a makeup test graded on a curve I didn't set. On week 5, she asked, do you think you can forgive me? I wanted to give her a date, a task list, a finish line. Instead I said, I can act in goodwill. My feelings will lag. She nodded, unoffended. Later, Ms. Alvarez called with a reminder. Temporary agreements are only useful if both parties can breathe under them. I finally admitted breathing felt like work I couldn't keep doing daily. I filed the papers. Not as revenge, not as a verdict on her humanity, but as a boundary my body could live inside. We kept it civil. We returned wedding gifts to each other in a cardboard box of shared memories. The thrifted globe, the chipped mug, a handful of Polaroids wrapped in elastic like old cash. I told Theo I didn't want Aaron blacklisted, just outside my circle, permanently. Dr. Patel's final call was clean. Both of us treated, cleared, documented. On my last night in the apartment, I set the folder on an empty counter and slipped out with one duffel bag. I learned that love without truth is a costume that itches, and truth without love can blister. You need both, or you need out. If you're watching this and your calendar is whispering, listen, write it down. Treat your body like the home you have to live in, and your dignity like the lock on the door. I still believe in marriage, and I still believe in mercy. I no longer believe in ignoring evidence when the dates won't bend.